Hi, this is Amy
and Melissa. We are a couple of retired Texas teachers who are CALTs, Certified Academic Language Therapists. We started our own businesses, and now we have a podcast called
The Dyslexia Duo. So join us for our informative podcast, where we'll delve into dyslexia, covering the topics that affect parents, therapists, teachers, practitioners, and anyone who wants to learn more. We'll guide you through everything you need to know, from the first signs to the intricacies of dyslexia curriculum placement and beyond.
This season, we will cover the referral process, what to expect when your child or student is dyslexic, the generational impacts of dyslexia, and how to support those affected.
Come join us. While we continue our conversation with the Executive Director of Kendore Learning and Syllables Learning Center, Jennifer Hasser. Okay, so you've been in the biz for a while, right? So how would you define dyslexia, and what are the changes that you've seen in dyslexia over the past few decades?
Well, that's actually pretty easy. It sounds like a complex question, but
it is.
So the thing about dyslexia is that oftentimes it's interpreted, in my opinion, incorrectly. Right. So I'm not, and this is kind of hard as we're recording this, but as a past president of the International Dyslexia Association, I was also like a region rep for IDA, and I've done a lot of fundraising for them. And so I'm just saying this as my disclaimer because I do believe in it. I'm not saying I don't, but when I go into schools, I want the details. Like, I don't need this overarching label that maybe or maybe not people don't understand.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, what are we seeing? How prevalent is it? Right. Like, how is it compared to their peers? How is it compared to what they have been taught? How much repetition do they need? How much do they regress at the beginning of each year? So oftentimes you can get diagnosed with dyslexia, and based on the data, most people would agree. And then someone good teaches you to read and nothing persists, right? So was it we weren't taught well, or did we really have it? A lot of times I feel like you see the true dyslexia after good instruction.
Yeah.
So when I have kids come to me and I test them, I can tell a remediated dyslexic, right? Like, I can tell the difference between a kid that has had no instruction or poor instruction and a kid who's had good instruction but is truly dyslexic, right? Like, that these patterns are hard for them to retain.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you usually see a gap between decoding and spelling, right? And so you'll see these different markers that really say, like, this child has dyslexia, right? And oftentimes I see kids who really have just slow processing speed being labeled dyslexic. And I'm like, they're not dyslexic. They need more time. They've got, the skills are down. You're trying to force them to do something they cannot complete in a certain amount of time. It's just like when my kids were younger and I said, your grandma's coming over, clean your room. How much time do they have is how much I find things under the bed or in the closet. You know? It's like, I know you know how to clean your room, but maybe we know it has to be done and the kids rush through it. It's not good. So knowing more about profiles, I think, is more important than just having a label.
Yeah.
What I found is that if I go in with specifics, I will be on the same page, right? I'll say, like, are you noticing they have poor spelling? Yes. Are you noticing maybe some graphomotor issues with, like, pencil grip or handwriting, or all the different things we can talk about that are markers that could be dyslexia? Are we all in agreement? Right? Then we can work our way to the label. But a lot of people get really defensive when you start with the label. And I feel like there's a better way to get there. And there is such a continuum of dyslexia that my dyslexic daughter is, a voracious reader. Right. Like, she was reading a picture of Dorian Gray on our vacation this weekend. Right.
Oh,
she carries around Fahrenheit 451. I'm like, okay. I'm reading a junk novel on my phone. It's vacation. about some mushrooms that took over people's brains. I mean, it's really ridiculous, but I just picked it up at the airport. But her spelling has never really reached the level that for her oral vocabulary or her ability to decode.
Yeah.
Right. So that is, she'll always have dyslexia. We know where she needs to compensate and advocate. And now she has a career. She graduated with 2 degrees from college, and she advocated for herself in college about her spelling. And she advocates in her friend like chat groups or whatever. People will be like, nice spelling. And she's like, I have dyslexia. And, she'll just tell her, she educates people. She doesn't have any problem with it, telling people. And I think that's great. But there are other kids who are not going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Right. So their difficulties are going to be way more severe.
Yeah.
And so treating everyone with dyslexia the same is
right.
So to me, if you understand the whole thing about equity that we've talked about for forever and ever, fair is not equal.
Right.
And that's just the way that it is.
And
and
I think that so many people understand like autism spectrum, right? Because we know that when you run into somebody who's been identified with autism, it's going to present itself differently from person to person. But I don't feel like as many people understand that about dyslexia, that it too is a spectrum of difficulty. They're not going to present the same way in every person, so even within families. And I
right.
think we're getting better at it, but I don't think we're quite there yet.
A lot of educators, once they learn something, they stick to it like it's the truth that has come down from the mountain, some guru. And that's just not the way it's ever going to be.
Right.
The first thing I say is, well, what are you seeing? Why do you think that? What is different than the other kids you're seeing in your room? Like one of the schools I worked at early in my career was, I kept getting these teacher referrals. That's how they did they didn't do real testing. It was a teacher referral. And then I did the testing, and they didn't really understand. And I was getting all these kids that had no reading issues whatsoever. And I went to the teacher and I was like, okay, so what are you seeing? Why are these kids getting flagged? Because their decoding was fine. I was just doing a screener. Yeah. It didn't have but I started to notice a pattern. And a couple of the teachers in this grade, actually, they were referring all the kids who didn't finish their work. So they were the ones that were annoying them. Like it kept them from transitioning to recess, or they were always saying, hurry up, we got to finish this up. I had to take it home. And I was like, that's not dyslexia, right? That's not a reading issue. But if they couldn't finish, they were assuming it was because there was an issue.
Yeah.
And so, I'm always asking, what is the question behind the question?
Right.
What is it that you're seeing? And then what do you need to be able to do that well, right? Like, so if I can't do this, then I'm probably going to see other skill deficits that require that same prerequisite skill. Right. And so processing speed is a big one because there's a continuum.
Right.
And we've got kids who process in the 95th percentile, right? Like super fast. They can retrieve. Doesn't mean they know what they're retrieving.
Right.
Like it's just like, and so that's completely different than a kid who knows exactly what they want to retrieve, but it takes them a while and they have to think about it. And that's going to present differently. And accommodations are not a bad thing. When teachers, they feel like they're not being fair. And so I'm like the queen of analogies, but I'll say, like, have you ever seen a PE teacher telling a one-legged kid to hop faster?
Right.
Because it's so ridiculous and cruel, we couldn't even imagine it, right? But when we can't see these things going on in people's heads, we think they're doing it on purpose.
Right.
And most teachers weren't awful at school, right? They didn't hate school. They decided to spend the rest of their life in a school. So saying, it'd be like someone trying to drag me to a bikini contest. And for anyone who's never seen me, I'm in my mid-50s. Even in my mid-20s, I probably would never been in a bikini contest. But if I had someone who was in them all the time and winning, they're just like, oh, you just need to stand up straighter.
Right. Yeah, that's not going to do it.
Shoulders back.
Yeah.
That's the issue, right? So it's not a want, right? It's what process is needed. And oftentimes I'll hear, well, there's a processing deficit, or there's a, they have trouble. They just, these random words like, well, it's processing. And everything is a process.
Right.
So if I go to a mechanic and they say, well, it's an engine problem, I kind of need it narrowed down.
Right.
Like what kind of, is there no gas getting to it? I ran out of gas. That's an easy one to fix.
Right.
Is it the transmission? Fixable, more expensive.
Right.
Is it that the whole engine needs to be replaced? We got like massive problems here. So those things are all require different solutions. So to me, it's about asking these questions, and a lot of these kids won't qualify for dyslexia, right? Like a lot of our kids that can't read, they're never going to qualify for dyslexia. And still in our schools, the comparison is what drives the identification. So if you're in a very wealthy school where the kids are performing high and your child is an outlier, then it might be evident.
Right.
But that same child in another school might not even come close to being identified. And the teachers are like, they're doing great.
Right.
Because I work with some schools where every single kid in the school would qualify if they were in a different district.
Wow.
Right. But that's unfortunately the way our system is set up.
Yeah.
Is that only so many kids can qualify. So what happens when you're in a really underfunded, underperforming, low income, lots of different things going on there, they still have the same percentage of kids in special ed as a school where all the kids are off the charts high. Right. So that's why I feel like I'm so passionate about teachers understanding what goes into being a good reader, because then you can take your average kid and make them exceptional.
Right.
You could take your low kid and make them average. You could take your exceptional kid and blow the curve.
Right. Right.
Right. There's nothing saying like, well, parents say that to me, all the time, like, well, I turned out fine. And I'm just like, I want to say, but I have once or twice. I'm like, well, how do you know that you could not have been better?
Right.
Like, why would we want to hold our kids back, or even our low kids because they're low, or our average kids because they're average? We should be doing the best we can to raise all kids. I've had teachers tell me, I can't teach that in second grade. What would they learn in third grade? I'm like,
yeah, I've heard
more. They learn more.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that a lot of the problem too is that schools don't know what they need to know about dyslexia still. Even though there is much better awareness, it's not where it needs to be yet.
For sure. It's about knowledge. Absolutely.
And if you had a magic wand and you could help educate schools, what would you do? What would be your first course of action?
Well, that's honestly why I started working with teachers and doing teacher training. So when I train teachers, I work in general ed. I mean, when I was first asked to train, it was general ed teachers that came to me, and so I taught them how to teach reading. And then they said, what program should we use for our special ed kids? And I was laughing because I'm like, the same thing. But you can go faster with gen ed kids. You don't have to go at the pace that they need. But when you test kids, which, the whole world is screening now, right? But not a lot is changing in the way they react to those scores. Slowly, hopefully it's going to. But if I have a kid, let's say, that is in the 5th percentile across the board, right? Like just 95% of kids are performing better than this child on prerequisites, right? So like your working memory capacity, your retrieval speed, your phonological processing, like on these prerequisites, like we haven't even taught you how to read. You're in kindergarten. And you're going to have, because it is a bell curve, out of 100 people, you're going to have kids that are 25th percentile or below, because every group is going to norm into a bell. But if I know that there are a group of kids that are, let's say, 15th percentile or something, and there's 10 of them, the number one thing you can do to help them is start right then. Why would we wait until they're failing?
Right.
Right? Like, that's ridiculous. But then even more important than that, if we know their memory is very poor, which means we're going to need a lot of repetition, their ability to retrieve information is poor, right? Like their phonological processing is poor. Like all these things are poor. Why do we think that they're going to learn at the same rate as the average or above kids?
Right.
Well, we've been teaching them all year. They still haven't done it. I'm like, what those scores told you is that that group of kids is going to take 3 times as long to learn how to read. What does that mean? That means maybe 3 years when everyone else learned in 1. Why are you still saying, I don't get it?
Yeah.
You know, like I don't get why they haven't caught up.
Yeah. Or the program isn't working.
Right. Well, you can't move at the same pace, which oftentimes happens. They just keep throwing information at them, even though they didn't master anything. Mm-hmm. When they know for a fact that they're going to take 3, 4, 5 times longer than other kids. So you just say, I'm going to commit to this, right? Like that's why I use analogies, because reading is somehow in this little microcosm by itself. Everything else on this planet, people will not think you just know how to do it automatically, or everyone learns in the same rate. Nobody thinks that. Mm-hmm. People are like, oh, well, my daughter she wasn't a ballerina, so we did soccer. Well, why wasn't she a ballerina? Maybe she couldn't balance. There's all these prerequisites that you would need.
Right.
And so she didn't have them. And so you move to a different sport. If the parents are 4'10" and the child's probably gonna be 4'10", we might pick something other than basketball.
Right.
Right. Like, so we probably can predict that maybe you're not going to be 7 feet tall. So it's like we have these predictors, yet we're ignoring them. And I think if we said we need to make a commitment to these kids and stop blaming them for the fact that they need more time. We tested them. We know they need more time. Why are we blaming them for that? Right. That means that, if they needed 3 times as long, then if they're 2/3 of the way with other kids, like obviously we don't have to keep repeating that and moving our kids forward. So I think still, if there was something that I'm really hoping to move towards, is that we have like a deeper understanding of the processes involved in reading, that we're looking at the testing, but it's actually working with the instruction, that we're making space and time for the kids that need it, that we understand that accommodations for some kids are necessary, that we understand the difference between accommodation and modification would be really great.
Yeah.
And really be more flexible when, if a child, like when I taught high school, right, starting all the way back in the beginning, if they can't read, why do you care if they pass 11th lit?
Right.
By me reading aloud to them. I'm like, right, you're going to have me push them out into the world without any assistance and expect that something is miraculously going to happen, because we have to get through certain standards that don't matter if you don't have the space.
Right.
They're not ready for it.
Right.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Hi, this is Melissa with Kids First Dyslexia Services. I am excited to share with you my private practice. Kids First Dyslexia Services is a private practice that specializes in dyslexia therapy. Each one-on-one session focuses on instruction specific to your child's needs in a nurturing environment that develops self-esteem, builds confidence, and fosters a sense of accomplishment, resulting in happier kids with higher levels of achievement. We provide a professional, personalized experience, always putting the child first. We value the relationships with both our students and parents, because strengthening skills and overcoming hurdles to achieve desired goals and success is a team effort. For more information, please visit www.kidsfirstdyslexia.com. That is www.kidsfirstdyslexia.com.
Hi there. This is Amy Rodenroth, owner of Discovery Dyslexia Services. So tell me if any of these situations are familiar to you. Your dyslexia teacher/therapist has suddenly retired unexpectedly, and you do not have the personnel to fill the space. Or you do not have enough trained teachers or therapists for the number of students who have qualified for dyslexia services, and you need a trained teacher or therapist quickly, like yesterday quickly. Or you need a teacher to provide compensatory services and you do not have anyone that can provide what's needed. Well, what do you do? I'm going to tell you what you can do. You can call Discovery Dyslexia Services. Discovery Dyslexia Services can help you with your various dyslexia concerns. We have multiple CALTs who can provide virtual small group therapy. We can also train your teachers in most dyslexia curricula, either virtually or on site. Just let us know how we can help support you. For more information, go to our website at www.discoveread.com. Let me spell that for you. DYSCOVEREAD.com. I don't know, it's a funny name, but we're providing huge services for our dyslexic population. So keep in mind, Discovery Dyslexia Services, covering all your dyslexia needs. Let's return to the show. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff you do at Kendore. And one of the things y'all do is the Kendore Cares, the Dyslexia Dash. So what is that doing? Is it helping spreading awareness in the community about dyslexia? What are some of the impacts you've seen of that?
Well, the Dyslexia Dash is actually a 5K run that I started for the International Dyslexia Association. Oh. So it is in Georgia, our biggest fundraiser. We raise a couple $100,000 a year.
Wow.
And it goes to teacher training and education and some webinars and funds, things like that. But my main goal was, it was fundraising, but it was mostly education. So I wanted to bring people who run to the race. And then we put signs along the route with all the warning signs of dyslexia.
What a great idea. Oh my gosh, that's great.
I can't say it was my idea. I was walking through the park down the street from me, Piedmont Park, and they were preparing for a race for MS. And as I was walking around the park, and my children were young, and it said, "What is the age of onset?" And then you had to wait till you got to the answer. And then it was like, and I was just like, wow, I know a lot about MS now. And I thought, we need this for dyslexia. We need people to know it's not reading backwards.
Right.
And so we started out, initially our little slogan was, if you think dyslexia is reading backwards, you have it backwards.
Oh,
cute.
So that on the t-shirt, it was just kind of like, oh, that's not what it is. At least it was the one thing we could spark like on our t-shirt. And then have those kind of question and answer along the whole route, and also have something positive that kids with dyslexia could be involved in, right? We're celebrating their dyslexia. So I started when my daughter was 6, and well, both were twins, so they're both 6, but my dyslexic daughter was 6. She just loved being there, and I let her hand out the medals and something around dyslexia that wasn't mom being mad at the school or testing or expensive or all these or heartbreaking, or whatever, or people telling you to try harder and you're trying as hard as you can, something that was just kind of positive. That was my goal all the way around. And it's worked out really, really well. A lot of other branches in other states have done them as well. So it's spread to a lot of different places. And so that makes me very happy as far as education is concerned. And then we got a whole different demographic coming, because like runners aren't going to come to the conference.
Right.
People who come to our annual conference are people who already know what dyslexia is, right, or they wouldn't just randomly show up. So it's just community outreach. It was another way to do that. And I do a lot of dyslexia simulations, and I do those for free. I've done thousands of them, because that way they get to experience it. And once you experience it, you could like lecture people all day long. But once they feel the frustration, it just makes such a big difference for parents. I do 2 a year for free in like a webinar format for people all over the place. And then locally, I've done them for virtually anyone who asks and has an interest for different groups. So that was for that. And then Kendore Cares is our nonprofit. And to be honest, I started right before the pandemic. And we really haven't gotten a lot of traction on fundraising. So, because then the pandemic, you remember that, right?
I do remember,
That happened. Yeah. And our big fundraiser was called Gin and Phonics. And when you weren't allowed to get together and have gin and phonics, that made it was for adults, by the way. And just so you know. And so we really haven't gotten back to it, but I was just talking to somebody actually this morning about, I was catching up on work this morning and talking about scholarships. And I mean, I've probably given out $700,000 or $800,000 in scholarships.
Wow.
Over the, course of my career, for sure, for years and years and years. Every assistant teacher or parapro or whatever they're called in different places could come to my full training for free. And that's because the assistant usually gets the kid who's struggling sitting in the corner.
Yeah.
And they don't know what to do with them. And so the schools wouldn't pay for them. So I gave it to them for free.
Wow. And
it's a mission, right? Like when we really get into this, it's a mission, it's not a job. It's it's a lot. We see kids struggle that don't need to struggle. It breaks your heart. You do need to learn a lot of things, but I don't think the things that you need to learn are beyond most people's capacity.
Right.
So I don't want to say it's easy, but I'm saying each tidbit is easy. And then you just have to develop a whole catalog of knowledge. And starting is the biggest thing. Just get started. And as a parent or a teacher or an administrator, start educating yourself, start asking some questions. A lot of administrators I've known over the years, they need to raise test scores. You know what's going to raise test scores? Better trained teachers.
Right. And appropriate interventions.
The next curriculum that doesn't address the needs or the teachers who don't understand how to use it, you just threw $1 million down the drain.
Right.
A highly trained teacher is a very valuable resource. And a curriculum in the hands of a very well-trained teacher is a magical thing.
Yep.
Someone give me a physics book to have me teach physics. I don't think it would go well. When I taught high school, I had to teach every subject. I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So Amy had mentioned earlier your products, and I don't know if all of our listeners know about your products, but people need to know about your products because I have heard about them and I need to buy some, obviously, because I don't have any.
You can look there when we're done with the pod. They're in the next room.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you offer?
Our website is KendoreLearning.com, and we have things related to reading. So card games are really popular, for a lot of people because, you can use them in so many different ways in the classroom. We have courses, all kinds of little courses. So we have the big ones and we have small ones, and some training programs are not willing to compromise on the length of what they will do for training. I, however, feel like I need to, I might be, you ever go to Costco and there's someone there at the table that's like, try my crackers?
Yeah.
I have classes that I do free webinars for an hour. I do half day classes. I do full day classes. We do full certification all the way through where you have to take everything over a multiple year period and do practicums. But to me, who's going to just sign up for this massive class with all this work without tasting the cracker?
Yeah, that makes sense. Everybody loves Sample Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, at Costco, you don't like them when you get them home and you've got enough crackers for the next 5 years that you don't like, right? So to me, I try to do a little bit for everyone. I do game nights, like we have a digital play date coming up soon, and that's just anybody can join for free, and I teach them how to play the games. Because some people buy them and they're still shrink wrapped, and I'm like, well, come join us. But we have a YouTube channel that teaches people how to play them with videos. I'll do the digital play date. People can just call our office and we can help them out. And so we have all of those things and books and dyslexia therapy and assessment. And we do screenings that are low cost. Because I was a diagnostician, which I kind of mentioned in the beginning, and I did full psychologicals back in the day. But what I found was I did hours and hours of testing, 25 pages long, and the parents didn't understand it.
Yeah.
And the teachers didn't understand it. And I felt like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Because typically, because testing is expensive, they waited 2 years too late. They should have come sooner when they first suspected, but they didn't think, it wasn't worth the money, or their teacher was saying, let them grow out of it. Or so we do screenings that are low cost. So just depending on what you get, but under $300, you can have reading and writing and math and all the prerequisite skill processes, and barely breaks even, if that. Usually not. We don't break even for screenings. But to me, it gives parents the information they need to either go get full batteries or request them from the schools, and they're willing to spend that amount of money sooner.
Yeah.
And it'll set them on the path. And sometimes I'm the person that has to rip the Band-Aid off, and then nobody likes that. Right. Like, I know that the parents can be very upset. Right. So even if you think your child has cancer, let's say something terrible, and you go to your pediatrician and they say, I think they have cancer, the first thing a parent's going to do is say, I need a second opinion.
Right.
Right. That's normal. That's logical. And that's not a bad idea. Right. So when a parent says to me, I need a second opinion, I'm like, here's some people.
Right.
Go for it. And if they don't believe me, because I've had people say some really horrible things, right? They thought something was wrong. I told them there was something wrong, but they didn't like it. Right. That's also a normal response.
Yeah.
Right. It is a very normal parent response. So sometimes, I can do the Band-Aid off, but you know what I did? I helped the next person who's going to tell them, and they're going to be more willing to receive them.
Right.
Right. So to me, no matter what, how it's received, whether they stay with us or go somewhere else or whatever, in the end, it always comes back around to be what's in the best interest for the child.
Yeah.
Right. So like, we get them closer to what they need. And so that is a big thing also that we do.
We're getting close to the end of our session together, but one of the things our listeners like is when our speakers talk about books that they use in their practice, or websites that they like to refer back to, or who motivates you. So who are some of those, or what are some of those for you?
I am kind of a contrarian a little bit, but what I like to do is look at something and say, why do we think that's the best way to do that?
Right.
Right. And why have we been doing it the same way for so long? Or are these really quote unquote exceptions? Or so for me, I like to kind of delve into the why behind it. So like earlier I was talking about stress and sentence stress and the words like to the instead of to the. So my biggest thing is ask yourself those questions. Google. When you say, I want to find out more information on fluency, right? There's so much out there, but if you're not asking yourself these questions, you're going to believe the first thing that you read.
Right.
Right. And so there's a million resources out there, but does this make sense? Does this make sense in what I'm seeing with my kids? Right. Like there are a lot of people talking, right? We need to be good consumers of what we're reading, of what we're thinking. And when I see people have like these massive emotional responses, when you say, well, why are you doing it that way? That is telling, right? Like you shouldn't have a massive emotional response to why are you teaching that rule? What you should have is a well thought out reason.
Right.
Right. And why am I doing that? Right. So if you're that emotionally connected to something, I don't think you're really being that analytical. But when we look at the way that we teach, I think we need to say, okay, I'm teaching phonics right now. How can I put morphology in this? What is the meaning in this word? Right. When I'm looking at the morphology, what is the part of speech? Because suffixes are going to tell you the part of speech. Yep. Right. Like that's why would we not incorporate that in? Are there multiple meanings for these words?
Right.
Right. Almost all one syllable words have 10 or more meanings, 10 to 400 different meanings.
Right.
Right. If we're not acknowledging that, we're not looking them up. We need to like delve deeper into this and really think about what we're doing and why we're doing it. Right. That is my number one thing, is be self-reflective. Why am I doing this? Right. Like, is it just because someone told me? Is it been working? Is this why? Like why?
Right.
But as far as like a get started, I really do like the essentials guides.
Yes.
I think that they're broken down for people who are just getting started, can get really overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Right. So my first step is self-questioning. Like, what am I seeing? What is happening? Why am I doing it this way? What is the outcome I want? All the questions. Just ask tons of questions of yourself. Then if you feel like you can handle it, when I first started, I would give like Overcoming Dyslexia to my daughter's teacher. She's not going to just read that book and all of a sudden know what to do with my kid. I learned the lesson of just pick a few things. Give yourself some grace. Don't expect that you're going to know everything quickly. Look at these books as desk references.
Right.
Right. Look things up on the internet. Find out who these people are with their experiences. Is what they're saying making sense?
Right. Right.
All right. I think education is very similar to the diet industry, right? Like there's a $6 billion diet industry. The next best thing is coming down the pike. But if we really understood nutrition, that would put them all out of business with all the schemes and gimmicks and, most of that stuff. So I feel like it's the same way for reading instruction. The next person comes along, and currently there's a couple of bullies out there that I'm not real fond of, but so if someone's hypercritical, like let's analyze. Just the loudest voice isn't the right voice all the time.
Right.
And so if we can be reflective and we can look at these things. Now, for morphology, people confuse morphology and etymology. I love Etym Online, but that's etymology and not morphology. So also with morphology, just because it's on the internet in 500,000 pages, like you can find references for it, does that make sense? Right? Like I had a teacher, I was teaching about morphology, and it was like, I have a class called Wordplay that we do a lot of morphology with, but it was bio. I'm like, bi is the base, right? So O is a connector. So if you had biology, it would be BIO. Then the O is telling you that on either side of it are two bases, right? So BI and then LOG. So in the class, she goes, well, I just Googled and there's like 45 pages that say bio is the base. And I was like, well, let's talk about it, see if it makes sense. And instead of saying, no, that's not right, let's look at other words. Let's look at some patterns. Let's see if that makes sense, right? And so then I was like, okay, geology, GE plus O. So GE means earth. Well, then all of a sudden Pangea makes sense. Why is that pan, all, GE, earth, and then the A is a suffix, right? So it's like, let's look at these things and be a little bit more analytical, use our time wisely. And if anyone ever wants to email me about particular things, there's just so much.
Right.
I looked into second language learning in order to really work on prosody, right? Because how do we, in English, we have all these people who can automatically read fluently. Right. We give them the basics and they can read, right? Yeah. How do we get people who have never heard the words before to read fluently? Right. Well, when you start really looking into second language instruction, they talk about the fact that we have a stress time language. They talk about the fact, because I'm like, it is never two. Because people say two, two, and two. Well, TWO is two and TOO is two, but TO, 99% of the time, is going to be unstressed in a sentence. So it's hardly ever sounds like it. Same thing with the, but I hear people just teach it as the. Mm-hmm. And it's not that it's never the, but the majority of the time, it's the.
Right.
So that I had to go and do a whole deep dive in second language learning. Yeah. So I think that the most important thing to me is questioning. And I think it stems back to my students in high school who heckled me to death. But as they asked me these questions, is the only thing that changed my mind, because I was like, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. Let's figure that out. Sometimes some of the things I figured out last year.
Right.
Like 30 years later, I'd like to go back and tell them, but you can only learn so much.
Yeah.
And to give yourself the time and the space. I think if you care and you're willing to learn, that is a way better combination than someone who thinks what they're doing is correct all the time.
Right.
A little bit of self-doubt is helpful.
Perfect.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. This has been so knowledgeable from your perspective. And then I just was so enamored by what you were sharing with us. So thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you for taking time out on your Sunday, and you just kind of got back, and we really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
So this is Amy.
And Melissa.
And we're the
Dyslexia Duo.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. The Dyslexia Duo podcast hosts are Amy Rodenroth,
Melissa Dean.
Our producer is Greg Rodenroth.
You can find us on Facebook at The Dyslexia Duo.
Email us any questions or comments at thedyslexiaduo@gmail.com.
Awareness is so important. Share this podcast with your friends,
family,
and teachers.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye.